The moment I turned into my driveway that afternoon, something inside me tightened. It wasn't dramatic, no explosion, no suspicious noise, nothing obviously wrong. But every nerve in my body whispered, "Pay attention." My workshop doors I always locked, were wide open. Not cracked open, not slightly ajar, but fully open like someone was welcoming a stampede inside. I slowed my truck and muttered, "What the? No. No." My voice came out tense, almost breathless. I killed the engine and stepped out, eyes locked on the open doors. The entire neighborhood looked peaceful. Birds were chirping. Kids in the distance were laughing. But it all felt fake, like the calm soundtrack before a jump scare. As I approached the workshop, I saw it, and my mouth literally fell open. A pristine, spotless white Lexus SUV sat parked directly in the middle of my workshop, not just inside, centered, perfectly placed like it was the main attraction in a luxury showroom. The paint gleamed under the workshop lights I knew I had turned off earlier. I blinked hard. "You've got to be kidding me," I whispered, voice rising in disbelief. Then I saw the license plate, HOA 1. I breathed out a laugh, one of those sharp, disbelieving laughs that sound more like a choke. "Oh, Patricia, you did not do this." But she did. Of course she did. Then the gleam of something on the dashboard caught my eye. I narrowed my eyes, leaned in, and read the laminated note. Yes, laminated. Sitting proudly like a badge of honor. "This structure is currently under review by the Pine Ridge HOA for zoning violations. As HOA Chair, I have designated this space as temporarily available for communal use. Do not remove vehicle until review concludes." My eyebrows shot up so fast they almost launched off my forehead. I whispered, "Communal? Communal? Are you out of your mind?" My voice cracked on the last word. But I didn't yell. I didn't storm into her yard. I didn't start throwing tools. I just stood there, inhaled deeply, and said to myself in a completely flat tone, "Okay, all right, sure, this is fine." It clearly wasn't fine, but sarcasm kept me from exploding. Before this moment went nuclear, let me explain who I am and who I'm dealing with. My name's David. I'm a metalworker, welder, sculptor. I built this workshop myself, designed the layout, installed the electrical, even picked the cedar siding to match my house. I had every permit. I had every HOA approval from years ago. This place wasn't some random shack. It was legal, beautiful, and my pride and joy. And then Patricia Holloway moved in. Patricia was the type of person who smiled like she was posing for a brochure on Passive Aggression 101. The first time we met, she walked right up to me, shook my hand firmly, and said in a chipper but intimidatingly firm voice, "Hi, I'm Patricia, and I'm very passionate about keeping this neighborhood perfect." Perfect. She said it like a threat. At first, her remarks about my workshop were subtle. That's a rather bold structure for a residential area," she'd comment with a tight smile. Or, "Are you sure that's within HOA guidelines?" In the tone of a teacher catching a student cheating. Then she got elected HOA chair. And everything went downhill like a runaway freight train. Fake violation notices started appearing on my door. The first one I brought directly to her house. She opened the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, hello, David," she said in her sugary voice. I held up the paper. "Patricia, this says my workshop violates color standards. It's the same color as my house." She blinked slowly. "Yes, well, in certain lighting it appears slightly industrial." "What lighting?" I asked, incredulous. She shrugged like she was modeling innocence. "Sunlight, moonlight, afternoon light, it varies." I just stared at her. "This is ridiculous." Her smile tightened. "We'll see." And she closed the door softly, too softly. That's when I knew she was gearing up. After that, city inspectors started showing up. One guy knocked on my door looking confused. "Sir, we got a noise complaint?" he said awkwardly. I blinked at him. "At 8 a.m. on a Sunday? I was inside eating waffles." He laughed under his breath. "Yeah, I figured. I'm required to check, though." This happened repeatedly. Noise complaints, fire hazard reports, claims I was running an unlicensed business, even a rumor that I was storing dangerous materials. When I asked Patricia where she got that idea, she responded with a fake gasp and said, "Oh, I heard it from someone? Sandra, maybe? People are concerned, David. Concerned. Right, I installed security cameras because it was obvious she wasn't stopping. But today? Today she outdid herself. She escalated from annoying to unhinged. Parking her car inside my workshop was a move so bold and so brain-meltingly entitled that I genuinely had to laugh again just to process it. I took out my phone and snapped pictures from every angle. I even narrated under my breath. Yup, that's illegal. And there's the trespassing. And that's breaking and entering. And that's the stupidest laminated note I've ever seen. Then I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer. He answered on the third ring. Hey David, what's up? I sighed loudly. You're not gonna believe this. Patricia parked her Lexus in my workshop. There was a pause. Then he said, Inside your workshop? Inside, I repeated, like a spoiled cat crawling into a neighbor's house. He let out a sharp laugh. Please tell me you took pictures. Oh, I took pictures, I said, and video, and her note, and the license plate, and the open doors. He exhaled. Okay, so, that's trespassing, breaking and entering, and abuse of HOA authority. Want to press charges? I pinched the bridge of my nose. If I do, what happens? He hesitated. Honestly? Probably a small fine, maybe a slap on the wrist. HOA drama gets messy, and she'll drag it out. So, not satisfying. No, he said flatly, not satisfying at all. I hung up and stood still for a moment. No wind, no birds, just me breathing deeply, staring at the workshop that I built, now occupied by the world's most entitled, Lexus. Then something inside me clicked. I whispered to myself, All right, Patricia. You want to treat my workshop like communal property? Then I'm going to secure it like communal property. I walked back into the workshop. My torch sat on the bench. My welding mask hung on its hook. The quiet hum of the room felt like it was waiting, like it knew something was about to happen. I picked up the welding mask. The weight felt good, familiar, steady. Then I grabbed the torch. The cool metal handle sat comfortably in my palm. Across the yard, the blinds on Patricia's house snapped open wider. I could almost hear her gasp through the glass. I murmured, Oh, now you're watching? Good. I clicked the torch. A bright hiss filled the air. A blue flame sparked to life, dancing like it had been waiting for this exact moment. I stepped toward the open workshop doors, lowered my mask, and said softly, with a calmness that surprised even me, Let's lock this place up. Because Patricia hadn't just crossed the line. She had set it on fire. And now she was going to learn exactly what happens when you push a metalworker too far. The torch hissed to life in my hand, and for a second the whole workshop lit up with that familiar blue glow. It was the sound of power, the sound of confidence, the sound that said, I know exactly what I'm doing. I stepped toward the frame of the open doors, lowered my welding mask, and let the fire meet the metal with a bright, hungry spark. The first bead of molten steel sizzled, sparkling like tiny fireworks. And across the yard, right through her window, I saw Patricia's silhouette freeze. Oh, now you're concerned? I muttered under my breath, the torch humming steadily. You had no problem driving your entitled Lexus into my workspace like it was valet parking for dictators. The weld line grew thicker, stronger, solid. The metal fused perfectly, securing the right side door shut. I could feel Patricia's frantic gaze drilling into my back from inside her house. I could practically hear her voice in my head, shrill, offended, horrified. She must have sprinted onto her porch because, about 10 seconds later, I heard her screech. David, what are you doing? She shrieked, voice cracking like a car tire hitting a curb. I didn't lift the mask, didn't stop the weld. I simply raised my hands slightly in a one-moment gesture. Through the muffled sound of the mask, I shouted, securing my property. You can't do that, she yelled back, stomping closer. I could hear the slap of her sandals smacking the pavement in furious rhythm. Oh, I can, I said calmly, and I am. You have to stop immediately, she demanded, breathless and outraged. That's my car in there. I lifted my mask just enough so she could see my eyes. Yes, Patricia, that's your car, inside my workshop. Her face twisted. This is illegal. No, I said sharply, pointing the torch in her general direction like a fire-spewing finger. What's illegal is you breaking into my workshop, taking a key that wasn't yours, and parking your overpriced midlife crisis wagon inside my workspace." She gasped, as if I had slapped her with a wet newspaper. "How dare you speak to me that way? How dare you trespass in my building?" I shot back. "If you wanted attention, all you had to do was send another fake violation notice. This was bold." Her face flushed a blotchy red. "The HOA has full authority to inspect suspicious structures." "And what part of an approved workshop with permits, inspections, and documentation screams suspicious?" I asked, voice flat. She sputtered. "The large industrial equipment." "You mean my job?" I replied slowly. She crossed her arms, chin jutted out. "I have every right to review." "And I have every right to secure my property," I interrupted, slamming the mask back down with dramatic flair. "Don't you dare." But I already had. The torch roared again and the second weld line sealed the left door shut. Patricia's reaction could have won an award. She stomped in place, waving her arms like she was trying to swat invisible bees. "You're insane," she screamed. "I will report you to the HOA. I am the HOA." I turned off the torch and lifted the mask. "Exactly. That's why I'm doing this. You can't just trap my car." "Oh, I absolutely can. And you're lucky I'm not pressing charges for breaking and entering." Her jaw fell open so wide I briefly wondered if it would unhinge like a cartoon character. "This is harassment," she yelled. "Nope," I said, pulling out my phone. "This is self-protection." I snapped a photo of her standing outside my workshop, hands flailing, voice screeching like a malfunctioning fire alarm. "You're filming me?" she gasped. "Evidence," I answered. "You know, just in case." She let out a dramatic gasp and stormed back toward her house, but I could still hear her complaining loudly even behind the closed door. I laughed softly and returned to welding, sealing not only the main doors but also the small side door and even the window frames. Yes, I welded them shut too. Solid metal lines, beautiful clean work. It was like crafting the world's pettiest but most satisfying art installation. By the time I was halfway done, my neighbor Tom wandered over, sipping iced tea and wearing his usual expression of amused curiosity. "Hey, David?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "You, sealing the place shut?" "Yep, because of—" I pointed at the Lexus in the middle of the workshop. He squinted. "Wait, is that Patricia's?" "Yep." He let out a wheeze. "Oh, this is gonna be good." Patricia must have heard him laughing because suddenly her blinds flipped open like someone had yanked them violently. A split second later, she stormed onto her porch again. "You two think this is funny?" she screamed. Tom lifted his tea and calmly said, "A little." She screeched something incoherent and slammed her door so hard it rattled. Tom whispered, "She's gonna combust." "That's the idea," I murmured, sealing the final window weld. When I finished all the welds, clean seams, perfectly secured, I stepped back and admired my work like a sculptor stepping away from a masterpiece. "Beautiful," I said softly. "A fortress." Tom nodded approvingly. "Artistic? Oh, it gets better," I said with a grin. I pulled out my phone and uploaded the security footage. Patricia breaking in, her Lexus parked inside, her laminated note, straight to the neighborhood Facebook page. The caption read, "Securing my workshop from trespassers. Be back in 2 weeks." 2 minutes later, my notifications blew up. Tom looked over my shoulder at the comments, laughing so hard he nearly spilled his tea. "Oh, this is gold," he said. "She's going to explode when she sees it." "I hope so," I replied. "She earned it." Then I did 3 more things. First, I emailed a certified letter to the HOA board, detailing Patricia's trespassing and attaching all my evidence. Second, I set my sprinkler system to run automatically. The mist would slip in through the tiny ventilation gaps I left, not enough to damage anything important, but enough to annoy the hell out of her car's interior. And third, I loaded my truck with my bags. Tom stared as I tossed a suitcase into the back seat. "You're leaving?" "Yep." "For how long?" 2 weeks. He grinned like a proud dad. "Where to?" "Costa Rica." Tom burst into another laugh. "Patricia's gonna have a meltdown. That's the plan." I waved at him, locked my front door and climbed into my truck. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Patricia fling open her window blinds again. She looked panicked, then furious, then panicked again. She mouthed something dramatic. "Probably come back here, or you can't do this." But I just smiled, gave her a friendly little wave, and drove off. As I turned onto the main street, I whispered to myself, "Enjoy your stay, HOA 1." And with that, I headed toward the airport with the satisfaction of a man who knows he just executed the most elegant revenge of his life. The best part about leaving for vacation wasn't the warm Costa Rican air, or the beaches, or even the blissfully cold cocktails served in hollowed-out pineapples. No, the best part was knowing that while I was stretched out under tropical sunlight, Patricia Holloway was pacing around her house like a caffeinated squirrel, staring at her trapped Lexus and realizing, slowly, painfully, that she had absolutely no control over the situation. The chaos started the morning after I left. My neighbor Tom messaged me the moment anything happened, and his updates were pure entertainment. The first text came at 7:14 a.m. "Dude, she called the police." I spit my coffee laughing. I texted back, "Already?" Tom replied, "They're here. 2 patrol cars, get ready." I waited, staring at my phone, until 3 photos came through. The first showed 2 officers standing outside my sealed workshop, staring at the welded doors with identical expressions that said, "I do not get paid enough for this." The second picture was Patricia waving her arms wildly, shouting something with her mouth open so wide you could practically see her tonsils. The third picture was Tom's thumb blocking half the lens. "Oops," he wrote. Then came his message, "I'm close enough to hear. This is amazing." I put my drink down and leaned forward, reading every word he sent. According to Tom, Patricia had marched up to the officers yelling, "Arrest him! Arrest him now!" The officers tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't stop shouting. One officer apparently asked, "Ma'am, how did your vehicle end up in this building?" Tom wrote. Her face turned redder than a tomato about to explode. She stammered out something like, He forced me," but couldn't explain how I supposedly forced her to steal a key, break into my workshop and park her own Lexus inside it. The officer finally said, "Ma'am, this appears to be your fault." I nearly dropped my phone laughing. Tom added, "She tried to get them to break the welds. They refused. She tried to demand they call someone. They refused. She tried to get them to file a report. They refused." Apparently, after 30 minutes of nonsense, one of the officers told her bluntly, "You're lucky he's not pressing charges. This is his property, and he's free to secure it." Tom also wrote, "Bro, when they left," she screamed, like straight-up horror movie scream. I reclined on my beach chair, took a slow sip of my pineapple drink, and said to myself, "This is better than TV." Day 3 brought even more entertainment. Tom texted, "The HOA board called an emergency meeting. Apparently Patricia stormed into the clubhouse yelling, 'We need to allocate funds to free my car,' only for everyone else to stare at her like she was trying to convince them to sponsor a mission to Mars. One board member, Robert, pointed at her and said, 'Patricia, you acted alone. You broke into his workshop without approval. Why would we pay for your mistake?' She pounded the table so hard the pens rattled. "Because I'm the HOA chair." "And?" Robert replied, unimpressed. Another board member chimed in, "This is personal liability, not HOA business." Sandra, the only one bold enough to side with Patricia, tried to defend her by saying, well, maybe his workshop wasn't properly permitted. That's when Tom sent me a photo of Sandra looking embarrassed, as Robert dropped a folder full of documents onto the table with a loud slam. "He had every permit," he said. "He showed us 2 years ago." Tom captioned the picture, "Sandra looks like she wants to crawl into her purse and die." Then came the funniest message. They voted 5-1 to not help her. Guess who the one was? I laughed so loudly a couple next to me looked concerned. By the end of week 1, the situation had gone viral. Someone in the neighborhood, probably one of the teens, uploaded the security footage I posted to TikTok. The title said, "HOA lady parks in wrong workshop." That video hit 1 million views in 2 days. Comment sections were brutal. "This is what happens when you let the HOA become the IRS of neighborhoods. Bro welded her car into a dungeon, LMAO. She tried it with the wrong blacksmith. Kids in the neighborhood started calling my workshop the Lexus tomb. Others called it Patricia's panic palace. Teenagers took selfies in front of the welded doors. One even started a countdown timer labeled, 'When David returns.' As Tom put it, 'Dude, you unintentionally created a tourist attraction.' Patricia, meanwhile, was unraveling. According to Tom, she tried everything. She called locksmiths. They refused because nobody wants to mess with sealed steel doors without paperwork. She called metal workers. They refused because they knew me. We have a professional network, and apparently my story spread like wildfire. One welder said, "Tell her I'm busy forever." She tried breaking the workshop windows with a crowbar, but guess what? I welded the frames shut too. Tom texted me a blurry picture of her trying to pry one open, sweating like she was fighting a bear. Eventually, she managed to break her own car window in frustration, trying to retrieve something from the back seat. It didn't help. The best update came on day 9. Local news is here. Tom sent me a video clip. The reporter stood in front of my welded workshop saying, in a strange turn of neighborhood conflict, an HOA chairwoman's vehicle has been sealed inside a resident's workshop. Behind him, neighbors were laughing, waving, posing like they were at a festival. One guy was selling lemonade, another selling t-shirts that said, "Free the Lexus." The camera even zoomed in on Patricia standing on her porch with the look of a woman questioning every life decision she'd ever made. By the time my 2 weeks in Costa Rica were up, I felt like I'd watched a long, hilarious season of a drama show starring a villain getting exactly what she deserved. When I arrived home, Tom was waiting at the curb like an excited puppy. "Dude," he yelled, "you're back." "Miss me?" I asked, grabbing my luggage. "You have no idea how entertaining this has been," he replied. Half the neighborhood had gathered outside my driveway. Some had lawn chairs, some had popcorn. A few kids held signs that said, "We love David," and "Justice for the workshop." Patricia was standing at the edge of the crowd, wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy. Her lips were pressed together so tightly they were almost gone. She looked exhausted, humiliated, and possibly on the brink of exploding again. I walked toward my workshop. The weld lines I left gleamed in the sun. Perfect, smooth, beautiful. Patricia stomped forward. "Open. IT. Right. Now." Her voice cracked with desperation. I raised an eyebrow. "I'm going to. But don't rush me. I'm savoring this." "You ruined my life for 2 weeks," she shouted. I snorted. "Patricia, you ruined your own life by stealing a key and breaking into a workshop that doesn't belong to you," the crowd murmured approvingly. Someone clapped. She pointed a shaky finger at me. "You will regret this." I grabbed my torch, lowered my mask, and ignited the flame. The crowd quieted as I touched the torch to the seams and began undoing the welds with slow, deliberate movement. Sparks flew. The metal glowed, and Patricia stood there trembling, hands clenched, practically vibrating with fury. Tom whispered behind me, "This is better than fireworks." When the last weld broke, and I swung the door open, a collective gasp swept through the crowd. There it was, the Lexus, covered in a fine layer of dust. Condensation fogging the windows, water droplets inside from the sprinklers. The interior smelled faintly of tropical air freshener, the one I had hung before leaving. Patricia rushed forward, shrieking, "My car!" and nearly tripped over her own feet. She jumped inside and jammed her key into the ignition. Click, 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 click. Her battery was dead. She slammed her hand on the steering wheel. "No, no, no, no." Kids laughed. Adults chuckled. Tom said loudly, "Should have turned the lights off." She glared at him with murderous intensity. "This ice not funny." "It's a little funny," he said. She got out and scowled at the crowd. "Does anyone have jumper cables?" The silence that followed was the loudest I've ever heard. Finally, Tom stepped forward, grin wide. "Sure, Patricia, I got cables, but you're gonna have to ask nicely." She swallowed hard. "Please," she croaked through clenched teeth. Tom leaned in. "What was that?" She inhaled sharply, trembling. "Please, help. Me." Tom gave her cables. The moment her car sputtered back to life like a coughing dragon, she floored it and shot out of the workshop so fast she nearly hit her own mailbox. The crowd burst into laughter. 2 days later, the HOA board held a vote of no confidence. Every board member voted her out. Sandra abstained, probably because she didn't want to get roasted by association. Patricia resigned that same day. Within a week, a for sale sign appeared in her yard. The day she moved out, she didn't look at anyone. She didn't wave. She didn't say goodbye. She just climbed into her freshly detailed Lexus, shut the door gently, as if afraid the universe might weld her inside. and drove away without a single glance back. 3 weeks later, new neighbors moved in, a young couple who loved my metalwork and even commissioned a custom garden gate. They brought cookies, real cookies, not emotional terrorism disguised as baked goods. Peace returned to the neighborhood, and as a final touch, I crafted a steel sign and mounted it next to my workshop door. It read, "Private Studio. Unauthorized parking will be professionally secured." Every neighbor who walks by reads it, laughs, and nods like it's scripture. And somewhere in another neighborhood far away, Patricia Holloway is probably thinking twice before ever parking in someone else's space again. Because the last time, her car got a vacation too. Just not the kind she wanted.